Everything changed in a matter of seconds. But for the Tennessee Titans, the decay hasn't been a sudden crash. No, it has been a slow, agonizing slide into the dark. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I am your host, and before we pull back the curtain on this franchise's fate, I need you to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below on what you think of this team's chances this year. And if you want to take it a step further and truly support the channel, become a channel member today. Okay, let's dive into this. Because the 2026 season for the Tennessee Titans, it is not just another schedule. It is a desperate, bloody fight for the very survival of the franchise as we know it. Look, the vibes might be a lot higher this summer in Nashville, but we all know vibes don't win football games. In the unforgiving, hyper-competitive landscape of the NFL, only execution matters. And right now, this team is standing squarely on a razor's edge. If they fail here, the rebuild isn't just delayed, it's dead on arrival. Every single practice, every snap, every micro-decision made up in the front office is being magnified under the crushing weight of a fan base that has simply forgotten what it feels like to truly contend.
And that brings us to the central burning question echoing through the halls of the Vanderbilt Health Football Center right now. Can Robert Saleh save the Titans? Taking over as head coach, Saleh arrives with an experienced staff beside him, but he steps into a building completely haunted by its recent failures. Make no mistake, this is not a mere tweaking of a playbook. This is a full-blown organizational rescue mission. Saleh's tasked with pulling this team out of a dark, suffocating trench. He brings a reputation for ferocious, highly disciplined defense, but now he has to prove that his philosophy can actually translate into sustained, balanced success as a head coach. The expectations on his shoulders are heavy. The margin for error is absolutely zero. He is working against a ticking clock in a league that notoriously offers no second chances to regimes that cannot produce immediate, tangible results.
4. I just want to let that single number hang heavily in the air for a moment. 4 consecutive losing seasons. Just think about that. Let it sink in. Back in 2021, this franchise stood at the absolute summit as the AFC's #1 overall seed. They were the undisputed kings of the conference. And since then, it has been a relentless, agonizing fall from grace, culminating in back-to-back 3-win disasters. 3 wins. In the National Football League, 3 wins is not just a bad season, that is a systemic collapse. It is the kind of deep-rooted failure that infects a locker room, creating a toxic culture where losing starts to feel inevitable. This is the sheer magnitude of the hole Robert Saleh is trying to dig this franchise out of. It is a monumental undertaking to reverse a culture of defeat that has set in like concrete over the last half-decade.
3 pillars are currently carrying the weight of an entire city on their shoulders. These are the protagonists under fire. First, you have head coach Robert Saleh, a man desperate to prove his system works and that his specific vision can command and inspire a locker room. Then you have year 2 quarterback Cam Ward, stepping right into the chaotic spotlight. Ward is immensely talented, there's no denying that, but he's tasked with becoming the savior of a franchise that has literally forgotten how to win. He must process complex NFL defenses faster, manage the pocket under intense duress, and lead veterans who are desperately looking for a spark. And finally, you have a completely rebuilt roster, featuring plenty of new starters on both sides of the ball. These guys are essentially strangers, forced to become a cohesive, lethal unit overnight. There is no time for gradual chemistry building here. If any one of these 3 pillars cracks under the immense pressure, the entire structure comes crashing right back down to the basement. So the curtain rises on the 2026 season with one of the most highly anticipated, emotionally charged openers in recent memory. Week 1, at home against the New York Jets. It is an absolute cinematic set piece. Franchise legend Chris Johnson is being inducted into the Ring of Honor, meaning the crowd will be absolutely electric. The memories of past glory will be flooding the stadium, reminding everyone in the building of what greatness actually looks like. And standing on the other sideline, the team Robert Saleh coached for 3.5 years, the very team that unceremoniously showed him the door. The revenge narrative here is written in bold, permanent ink. It's deeply personal. Saleh knows their personnel inside and out. He knows their tendencies, and you can guarantee that he has spent the entire offseason meticulously crafting a defensive masterclass specifically designed to humiliate his former employers on a massive national stage. And in that dramatic opening act, they deliver 1-0. The Jets arrive with a plethora of tactical holes, and this new-look Titans squad exploits every single one of them. The offense brilliantly utilizes Cam Ward's mobility to break containment, attacking specific vulnerable gaps in the Jets' defensive front. The euphoria down in Nashville is deafening. Saleh gets his revenge in the most visceral, satisfying way possible. Cam Ward starts his sophomore campaign with a victory, demonstrating remarkable poise and precision. The newly assembled pieces fit together beautifully on the field, masking their lack of long-term chemistry with pure, unadulterated effort and adrenaline. And for one fleeting week, the Tennessee Titans feel absolutely invincible. But, as we all know, in the NFL, invincibility is a very dangerous, very fleeting illusion. After a massive win, the Titans fall back down to earth. That illusion shatters quickly. Week 2 brings the Philadelphia Eagles to town, and while the Eagles may have lost star wide receiver A.J. Brown, they possess something the newly rebuilt Titans do not have: brutal, battle-tested continuity. The Titans fight hard. They really do. They match the physical intensity early on, keeping it incredibly competitive through sheer willpower and scheme. But Philadelphia's deep experience, their deeply entrenched offensive and defensive lines, and Jalen Hurts' uncanny ability to execute under intense pressure eventually drag the young Titans into the deep water and drown them. Reality sets in with a cold, unforgiving shiver. The honeymoon phase of Week 1 is officially over, replaced immediately by the grueling reality of a 17-game war of attrition. Welcome to the early gauntlet. Look at this absolutely brutal stretch of games. It is a ruthless sequence that threatens to completely break the newly rebuilt team before they can even find their true identity. Right after the intense physical toll of the Eagles, they have to travel up to New York. Then, it's a terrifying trip into the incredibly hostile environment of Baltimore. Then back home to face the elite, high-flying Houston Texans. And then, back on the road to face a bitter divisional rival in Indianapolis. The travel schedule alone is exhausting, but tactically, every single week requires a massive, complex shift in game planning. Every single snap becomes a desperate test of survival against opponents who already know exactly who they are and exactly how to execute their systems. This right here, this is the kind of stretch where young, developing teams typically fracture. So the most crucial point of the entire early season is how they manage to navigate this bloodbath. Here is the damage report. They do manage to secure a gritty early season road win in New York. They unleash a deep, aggressive defensive line, utilizing complex stunts and severe interior pressure to make Giants quarterback Jackson Dart completely uncomfortable all afternoon. They forced bad, panicky throws and capitalize heavily on turnovers. It's a schematic win for Saleh. But that lone survival is heavily eclipsed by a string of unforgiving losses. They fall to the Eagles' continuity, just as we discussed. Then they travel to Baltimore, where new head coach Jesse Minter has built a defense with the potential to be one of the most terrifying units in the entire league. Minter brilliantly uses heavily disguised coverages and simulated pressures that totally confuse the young Cam Ward, forcing him into critical, game-changing mistakes. Expecting a win in that environment is simply too big an ask for a developing quarterback. And then, Week 5, the Houston Texans, a team that swept Tennessee in 2025, a team armed with DeMeco Ryans' elite defense, and a dynamic, fully healthy offense led by the surgical precision of C.J. Stroud. The Titans are undeniably far more competitive than they were a year prior, but they are simply outgunned when it matters most in critical moments. Even against the Colts in Week 6, despite the Titans' front seven giving Indianapolis massive problems at the point of attack, they suffer yet another heartbreaking loss on the road. The early gauntlet leaves them battered, bruised, and desperately searching for answers. But just as the narrative threatens to spiral right back into the dark days of those 3-win seasons, a critical, mid-season turning point emerges from the ashes. Look at this sequence closely. Week 7, they catch a Cleveland Browns team that is clearly in a rebuild mode. The Titans ruthlessly dictate the terms of engagement from the very opening snap. They have their way on the ground, they dominate through the air, and walk away with a decisive, massive confidence-building win. Then comes Week 8. A tough road trip to Cincinnati, a true toss-up game on paper. But Robert Saleh meticulously identifies and exploits a major weakness in the Bengals' secondary. He dials up relentless pressure packages that capitalize on lingering questions across the Cincinnati offensive line, constantly forcing the quarterback off his spot. It's a brilliant upset victory that sends a very clear message to the rest of the AFC. They head into the Week 9 bye week exactly when they need it, to rest, to heal the accumulating micro-injuries, and to regroup mentally. And they come out in Week 10 absolutely breathing fire against Liam Cohen's ascending Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jags are legitimate playoff contenders, and their passing game is highly effective, but they have fatal structural concerns at left tackle and linebacker. The Titans strike exactly there. Saleh schemes extra pressure aggressively from the blind side, completely overwhelming the left tackle and forcing rushed, highly inaccurate throws. On offense, they ruthlessly target the linebackers in coverage, exploiting mismatches over the middle of the field all game long. Another massive tactical win. And just like that, the momentum shifts. 5-4. I need you to let that sink in for a moment. For a franchise that has lived in the NFL's dark, suffocating basement for 2 agonizing years, looking up at a winning record at the midpoint of the season feels like an absolute miracle. You can literally feel the hope returning to the streets of Nashville. The energy inside the stadium completely changes. The narrative in the national media flips on its head. The question begins to whisper through the fan base, growing louder and more confident with every passing day. Is this it? Is this the renaissance we have been starving for? Can Cam Ward and Robert Saleh actually pull off the impossible and drag this franchise back to playoff relevance way ahead of schedule?
But the NFL schedule is a cruel, unforgiving entity, and it cares absolutely nothing for your momentum. Just as hope peaks, the late season grinder arrives. The tension ramps up entirely here because every single snap in the sequence dictates their postseason fate. The physical wear and tear on the players' bodies is accumulating fast. Week 11, on the road in the sheer hostility of Dallas. Week 12, a ridiculously high-stakes divisional rematch down in Jacksonville. Week 13, against a highly unpredictable Washington team. And Week 14, a matchup against the absolute juggernaut that is the Detroit Lions. The margin for error entirely vanishes in this stretch. One wrong step, one blown coverage assignment, one missed block on a crucial third down, and the entire season can slip away into the cold winter air.
This late season stretch is exactly where firepower collides violently with reality. In Dallas, the Cowboys are making serious noise. Sure, their offense is explosive, but it's their defense, under new coordinator Christian Parker, that completely changes the complex math of this matchup. Parker has armed his unit with Caleb Downs, Jalen Thompson, and D. Winters, and he uses these incredibly versatile pieces to completely stifle Cam Ward, blanketing his primary reads and closing throwing windows with terrifying elite speed. The Titans definitely have the firepower to compete, but they simply cannot overcome this revamped, highly disciplined defensive unit on the road. It's a painful, grueling loss. Week 12, they fall in a bitterly contested, hyper-physical rematch to Jacksonville, splitting the season series as divisional foes adjust to their earlier mistakes. It's just the nature of the AFC South. Week 13 finally offers a brief gasp of air. They face a Washington Commanders team that is overly reliant on star receiver Terry McLaurin. The Titans' defensive staff implements an absolutely brilliant game plan, double-teaming McLaurin on almost every single critical down. Quarterback Jaden Daniels simply doesn't have enough secondary weapons to make them pay, and their defensive secondary is highly vulnerable to explosive plays. The Titans' offense, which is fully in sync by this point in the year, exploits this aggressive man coverage for a crucial, hard-fought win. But then, Detroit. Week 14. Jared Goff is playing stellar, MVP-level football. The Lions have an arsenal of proven playmakers and a devastating game-wrecking pass rush. The Titans step onto the field, and they are simply outclassed. The Lions' defensive line overwhelms the Titans' tackles, completely neutralizing the play-action game, while Goff meticulously, surgically picks apart the secondary. It is a very sobering reminder of the massive gap between a team on the rise and a true top-tier NFC juggernaut. And now we have reached the absolute edge of the cliff. The final stand, the last 4 weeks of the season. At this point, it is no longer about glorious playoff runs or fairy tale Cinderella stories. The math is tightening. It is now a desperate, bloody fight for a respectable finish. A fight to prove to the rest of the league, to the fans, and most importantly to the guys inside that locker room that the culture in Tennessee has actually fundamentally changed. This is the moment where bad teams lay down and accept their fate, and where ascending teams stand up and fight for pride. The grueling climax of the 2026 campaign begins in Week 15, and they dig incredibly deep into their reserves, defending their home turf to split the season series against the Colts. It's a gritty, ugly, beautiful win, born purely out of defensive resilience. Week 16, a high-stakes trip out to Vegas. Fernando Mendoza is under center for the Raiders. The Titans are structurally the better overall team here, but they must survive the terrifying, single-handed game-wrecking ability of superstar edge rusher Max Crosby. You don't just block a guy like that. You have to dedicate your entire offensive philosophy to surviving him. Saleh and the offensive staff dedicate immense resources here. They chip Crosby constantly. They run the ball aggressively away from his side of the field, and they utilize a lightning-fast, quick passing game to neutralize his explosive first step. They survive the onslaught, another critical, tactical win. But then the final, exhausting collapse begins. Week 17 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Titans' offensive tackle situation has been a lingering, quiet question mark all year long, and now they must face TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, 3 elite edge rushers fully capable of ruining a carefully crafted game plan in mere seconds. The Titans' defense plays valiantly to keep the score close, but the Pittsburgh pass rush is simply too relentless. The pocket collapses time and time and time again. They crumble under the immense physical pressure.
And finally, Week 18, the Houston Texans. Assuming the elite division rivals still have vital playoff positioning to play for, they bring the hammer down, securing a decisive victory over Tennessee and firmly shutting the door on the season. The dust finally settles on the battlefield. The final whistle blows. 8-9. Let that verdict echo in your mind for a second. 8 wins, 9 heartbreaking losses. The record is permanently sealed. The fate of the 2026 Tennessee Titans is locked into the unforgiving history books. It is not a playoff berth, and they certainly won't be picking in the top 5 of the draft either. It is that complex, often frustrating middle ground of the National Football League.
So what is the harsh reality here? The Titans' streak of missing the playoffs will extend to 5 years, but an 8-9 season would be a successful season. I know, it is an incredibly conflicting, difficult truth to digest for a fan. On one hand, the playoff drought stretches to a painful half-decade. The ultimate goal, the Lombardi Trophy, remains miles and miles out of reach. But listen to me. Context is absolutely everything in the NFL. You have to remember exactly where they started this journey. You have to remember the suffocating abyss of back-to-back 3-win disasters, where the team looked completely lost and broken on the field. To climb from 3 wins to 8 wins, nearly tripling your win total, against a schedule heavily loaded with elite pass rushers and dynamic, high-scoring offenses, that is a monumental leap forward. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the structural foundation is finally being laid. It proves that the massive bleeding has stopped, that the cultural decay has been arrested. It proves that brighter days might actually finally be ahead in Nashville.
But I want to leave you with this lingering, profound question to ponder as we officially close the book on this season explainer. Is 8-9 truly enough? Is this record, this moral victory of clear, undeniable improvement, enough to spark a lasting, sustainable renaissance in Tennessee? Or does it just trap them in the endless, terrifying purgatory of NFL mediocrity? Not bad enough to draft a transcendent superstar quarterback, but not quite good enough to actually compete for a championship. What does the future truly hold for Robert Saleh, Cam Ward, and the Tennessee Titans as they look ahead toward 2027? That is the exact question that will haunt the front office all off-season long. Thank you for joining me on this deep, tactical dive into the Titans season. Remember, if you want the most intense, detailed football analysis out there, you need to subscribe to NFL Nexus, like this explainer, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and truly support the channel by becoming a member today. Until next time, keep your eyes on the gridiron.